Welcome to Too Techie, the podcast that challenges MSPs to think beyond the tech and build smarter, stronger, and more intentional businesses. I'm your host, Lauren Keeves, and today we're diving into leveraging ISO certifications as a sales tool to win new business. Joining me is Jason Maricchiolo from ISO 365, a leading voice in compliance and governance, and one of the first in Australia to be certified with the new AI standard ISO 42001. Let's get into it. Now, you're no stranger to podcasts. You've been seen across the industry in many, but in this one, we're going to take a slightly different direction. We're going to talk about how ISO certifications can be leveraged within a company's sales and marketing. So beyond just getting a certificate, to dive straight in, how have you seen MSPs leverage their certification to drive tangible benefits internally and track new business?
Yeah, so it's great to be able to talk about this part of ISO certification, Lauren, because generally, it's always about the implementation side and the technical controls, and I've got a strong passion about what to actually do with this thing once you get certified. So, yeah, I've definitely seen different MSPs using the certification to help with their sales process and also to build trust with their clients. And so I always instruct my partners, once we're done, this isn't the end. This is the start. And now you need to really start to promote your certification and start building that trust with your clients, but also, future prospects. So definitely seen many different versions of it across the board, mainly as well in tenders. So in the tendering process, I've seen a lot of MSPs leveraging that certification to be able to, differentiate themselves in that tendering process.
Yeah, amazing. So how have you seen it translate from operational improvements to actually having a clear linear connection to the key differentiators within their proposals or client presentations? What are they calling out?
Yeah, so from an operational perspective, we train partners how to effectively run a risk register. So they're running their own risk registers now internally, and so they're assessing and treating risk internally. We're training staff on how to also assess and treat risk internally. But then that kind of has an outwards facing aspect as well, because now once they learn that practice, they're starting to do risk registers, or at least starting to learn how to assess and treat risk within client sites, or even using that as a discussion point in monthly meetings or account management meetings, or in their quarterlies or QBRs, whatever anyone's going to call it at any point in time. So there's definitely an operational benefit that comes out of an ISO project, because they're learning along the way as well, and they take those practices into their clients as well.
Yeah. So then do you see them communicating that either to their existing clients or new businesses, or do you find that it kind of just falls to the wayside? And again, something that once they've been through it internally and they're in that process, it's, front of mind, that, do they actually go about communicating that well?
Yeah, well, I hope so. So they should definitely be communicating the risk that they're uncovering within their client sites, because that effectively leads to projects, right? So I always say that, by finding a gap or finding a risk within any organization, that should lead to some form of project, in this case, a technical project. So, they definitely should be doing something with it if they're not. But it comes down to the training and how confident they are in using things like risk registers to be able to drive that conversation forward.
Yeah. Well, from my side, when I've come across businesses that have gone, yep, okay, we've got our ISO certification, whichever one it might be, it's been like, right, let's just pop the logo on the footer of our website, or let's just, chuck it on our email signature, done and dusted. But obviously there are so many more opportunities. What have you seen from your side, and what's worked well to really showcase their achievement, and that actually means something beyond just, chucking it up onto those platforms?
Yeah, look, the lowest hanging fruit is to update the website, put it on your email signature. That should just be the minimum that you're doing after an ISO project. But for those that know how to leverage it, that's when the real value comes in. So, we're talking about adding those logos to proposals, and making sure that we're attaching certificates to either these proposals, scopes of work, even tender responses. Clearly, that's a big player if you are in the tender game. But the other aspect as well that we love to train partners on as well is to make sure that the sales team knows what it is we just did, right? So if a BDM or, a sales leader or anyone doesn't know how to talk the ISO language and start to actually understand and communicate what we just did as a team, if they can't communicate it, then there's a big opportunity there that's lost. Okay, because sales guys and girls that are out there, they should absolutely be able to talk that ISO benefit to their clients to be able to show that they're a trusted MSP. They've been through an external auditing process. These are the controls that are in place. They don't need to become ISO experts. They just need to know how to talk to it, because it is a significant achievement and a significant investment at the end of the day. So it's worthwhile getting the sales team knowing how to actually talk to it.
Yeah, so have you seen scenarios where it's actually been the deciding factor for the end client when picking a partner?
Plenty of times. Generally what happens is either when it comes down to the shortlisting, the quickest way to knock any body out that even if they do have a great response, is to go, well, let's start at the very top. Are they ISO certified? Because if they've got 3 or 4 partners in there out of 6 that are certified, then it immediately helps to make that decision a bit easier for the buyers. So, we've now gone to the scenario where there was 6, 2 of them might not have been certified, and then it comes down to, now we've got 4. That's a bit more of an easier decision to make, and then you dive into those 4, and it could come down to, how well have they communicated their ISO status in their tender response, and also the scope of their ISO certification as well. We have seen where scopes have been extremely limited, and that's something that we're really passionate about, that we want to make sure that the scope of an ISO certification covers the entire business. And it just relies on you just reading what that scope statement is to see what it doesn't include. So, I've definitely seen the ISO be the differentiator between definitely bringing down the pool of prospects, and then ultimately being the one that could win out.
Yeah. And because from my side, I've seen a shift. Most MSPs that haven't got a strategy in place will say their target market is any industry and have around 20 to 200 seats. Now, that's a whole other conversation, but I've seen now that shift, or at least with the ones that I'm working with, they're going after the 50 plus as a minimum.
Yeah.
And those more mature businesses are looking for these types of certifications. So, if you aren't really forward with it or getting in front of people, you could easily miss out on opportunities to tender. So now, obviously, you talk about the importance of the sales team being able to articulate that message. Is that something that you help with in terms of that talk track so it lands and actually makes an impact?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, for all our partners, the offer is always there as well to sit with the sales team and actually train them on how to speak that ISO language and to use it as a sales tool, because at the end of the day, you've just gone through a massive audit. You've just gone and, invested in what you have from a monetary perspective. And so, it's definitely something that we help with, and we teach those leaders on how to speak to that ISO certification. And in some cases, we're only really using ISO as a general term here. But if you start to actually look into which ISOs you are certified to, there's different ones, right? So there's ISO 27001, which is clearly the InfoSec one, the one that everybody in our space is I suppose latching onto and is at some point needing to become certified to. But then you've got some other forward thinking and progressive partners that have gone and got the quality certification, which is more about making sure that the service desk and that the customer satisfaction side of the business is is also being looked at, and having that quality certification is also a massive tick box when it comes to trying to win work, because we're now not talking specifically about the cyber side and how secure you are, but it's also about the fact that we take negative feedback and we take neutral feedback and we do something with it. We're not just going to let it slide. If we get a negative feedback, we're going to follow it up and we're going to raise corrective actions over that. So, there's many different avenues that, especially from a sales perspective, that you could be using these certs to really strengthen your offering to any particular prospect. You've got environmental as well, OH&S, depending on what industries that you're selling into. I know a couple of MSPs that have gone down the environmental path because they have clients in that vertical. Okay. And so that's just an added benefit for those clients and an added bit of assurance for them that their MSP is also environmentally sustainable and actually cares about the environment. So there's many different ways to be able to use your ISO certs and message that to win work.
Yes. So is there a standout campaign, without naming names, is there something that you can share with the viewers that you would recommend that they do to really emphasize through their marketing?
Great question. So I don't have a specific named example, but in a hypothetical example, I would, if I was certified to InfoSec and environmental and quality, that would absolutely be something that I would draw up a capability statement that is specific around that environmental industry, if that's what I was going for. And I would use all three standards to kind of paint that picture of why we are the best in that particular vertical. So you could use the same thing for the financial system, or even from a professional services vertical. Depending on where you're playing, there's different ISO standards that can help you out. Most recently, we know that the AI standard, which we might talk about a little bit later, came out, which is ISO 42001. And so that's another example of another area where you could, definitely leverage what you're doing in AI and actually, put a certification around it to show your partners that, you know what you're talking about and that you can really help them.
Yeah. I think making that connection, they'll kind of put that into one box and then they'll put their services into another box rather than actually draw the lines between them. And that's a very similar conversation that I'm having, even from a target market or ICP standpoint, rather than just trying to reuse the same script or push the same pitch onto different clients. They've got different interests, they've got different challenges that they're having. And so from a services perspective, they should be tailoring it to actually talk to the client's language and what it means to them. And the same applies for the ISO certifications, right? How can you tailor it like a capability statement per vertical as to the actual play to the ISO strengths, their strengths, and really blend it together?
Yeah, it's such a great point. It really is. And it's something that I think that once we learn how to leverage the discussion around the ISO and how to actually talk to it, I feel like it then becomes second nature. So, for those that aren't certified or haven't gone through a process themselves, it's kind of a different language. But then once you are in it and you've been through a bit of an implementation, and you start to learn, how it all works and how this can then relate back to clients and verticals, that's when I feel like I see a bit of a transformation happen within an MSP.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you already started sharing around the AI certification, and I know that's quite a hot topic. What do you see becoming of that, and how fast do you think it's going to get picked up?
Yeah, it came out at the end of 2023, and it took a good solid year for it to kind of embed and for anyone to get the standard, understand it, and then be able to build out systems. So we just became one of the first in Australia to become certified to ISO 42001.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But there's a reason why we wanted to do that, because we wanted to help our partners lead the way from an AI governance perspective. And we thought the only way to do that responsibly was to actually go through it ourselves. And so we wanted to do it, and we did it, and we got certified, a couple of weeks ago. And so now we've seen probably, it's now about 10% of our MSPs that are actually already adopting ISO 42001, and they are bolting that onto their existing ISO 27001. And so that is a really good way to be able to leverage both standards. And they just have, missions to become, the thought leaders and, lead the way from from an AI governance perspective. So they're walking the walk as well. So I definitely see that it's a small adoption at this point. It's not something that everyone's diving into unless you've either got some help like us or you're on that bleeding edge yourself. But I do feel like it's something that 2026 will bring, because we have been talking about 27001 for years now. Going back about 8 or 9 years, you could have said that this was more just an enterprisey kind of, certification, 27001. But what we've seen is that it's definitely trickled down to literally everybody now, because it does scale really well with any size business. It doesn't matter if you're one business or if you're 500, it scales extremely well because everything is a risk-based approach, and the standard is a management system on how to manage your risk. So we've found that now it doesn't matter what size you are. Your supply chain and things like insurance companies are looking to reduce their risk profiles of the companies that they're insuring, and one way to do that is to be able to, produce an ISO certificate.
Yeah, and of that 10% out of interest, are they already kind of in the market, or are they proactive with selling Copilot licenses and building, businesses processes or AI bots? Are they actively doing that? Or are these ones, wanting to get the certification before they start pursuing the path?
Really, really good question. So no, the 10% that are doing it with us now, they're all doing something in AI. So it's not something that they are using the certification and then they're going to start. They are all doing different things. So we could be talking about some building internal tools to be able to help answer questions so that others don't have to, humans don't have to answer those questions if they're, well documented and things like that. We've got others that are using AI to categorize tickets within ticketing systems. And so there's tools out there that do all of those kind of things. We have those that are leveraging AI to be able to communicate to clients on their behalf. So they're, what we call, external facing AI, and that has its own challenges as well, because you need to govern, those just as much as you do on the internal side. So it's been such a great experience to be able to do these workshops across our client base, because, everyone is doing something different, and it's really exciting to see what they're actually working on.
I can't wait to see what comes of that. With the opportunity for businesses to explore 42001, do you think moving forward it would be something that they do before going external, but they're having to do it internal? Or do they need to understand what they want to take to market before they go through with the process?
I would put it this way. Anyone that is looking to get to that 42001 level, I would say that they at least need to be ISO 27001 certified. It's a very good addition to a 27001 ISO, because as we know, 27001 is based on information security. And so the information that's going into these AI systems, it needs to be protected and secure as well, right? So there's no point kind of trying to go out and doing 42001 in isolation. You absolutely can do it. But I feel like in our space, in our MSP industry, I believe that it's a better addition to 27001, because let's face it, the 27001 is going to be the ticket to play in most cases. So we need to get that done and dusted and out of the way. And then it just becomes about, okay, now how can I leverage this commercially? And adding on an AI system might be the answer to that question for that particular company. So no, I think it can be something that, as long as we can leverage it and we understand how to use it and talk to it and show clients trust, because what we are now building for them we've got, proper AI ethics and, code of conducts and, transparency principles and all of those things front of mind when we're actually building these things out for our clients. So yeah, it doesn't have to be something that they have to wait until they're ready to go and do it. I feel like they can start the process at any time, whether or not they're doing a lot with AI or not, and then using that to help build their capability.
Yeah, right. Well, let's now talk in a general sense again across the board. We've already touched on how the sales team need to start leveraging it and having that talk track around that. But what benefits do you see with training any layer of the service desk up to, sales and SLT? How much time and what would you recommend for getting them to also have some sort of talk track? They're the ones interacting with the clients day to day.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. So training is definitely a part of an implementation from a technical standpoint and an operational standpoint. So the way it generally works is, even if you take a new hire, they go through their typical onboarding. You've got all of your normal HR related onboarding items, but then the ISMS becomes a part of their onboarding. So they read the policies, they sign off on them, they make sure that they understand their roles and responsibilities. They understand that, there's consequences if we breach policies, just like there would be with any other company policy, like a drug and alcohol or, a motor vehicle one that, that we have as well. So there's that aspect there where staff really do need to be onboarded to any management system, understand that it exists, and then understand their roles and responsibilities, because we all have them in every single system. And then from a technical standpoint, it's always good for, whoever can know the technical side of the standard to know what our rules are. Things like acceptable use policies and things like that will always help to explain to, either younger staff or staff that necessarily aren't on that, that senior engineer level. It will still help them understand how they're supposed to use and govern their information. You take someone in a finance team that may not be technical at all, but they've got some really confidential documents that they are responsible for. We even train those in those areas. Don't go sending Excel spreadsheets with everyone's payroll information around to each other, because that is a surefire way to make a mistake. Okay, you could send it to the wrong person, or something else could happen to that data. So training across the board is absolutely imperative in my book.
Okay, so thinking about the audience or the end client here, do you find that you have to go to those great lengths to describe the ISO certifications, how it's relevant to them, because there's gaps in their knowledge from the receiving end?
Usually what I find is that being armed with the information up front can help with some trickier sales meetings. So generally it's not just decision makers in there, but you have key influencers. You might have someone technical, an IT manager, or someone that isn't a stranger to the ISO. And so they might turn around and ask a salesperson, can you talk to me about your scope of your certification? And if that salesperson doesn't know what the scope of the certification is, that's almost a telltale sign that it was a tick box exercise. No one really actually trained this person on what a scope is, and they can't answer the fact that it is the entire organization, including any outsourced providers in any other countries, or whether or not it's just the local branch or the local office and everyone else offshore is actually out of scope. So I find that being able to talk to the standard can also help on those trickier, conversations that might be a little bit further down the garden path, not just the first meeting that you're having with the prospect.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there are many creative ways that you can integrate, trying to articulate it both to you and have the different audiences. Like you said, you've got the ones that will call you out on the spot, making sure you understand the scope. But then you've got others that they don't understand what it truly means. So producing even content that can help them in their own education of it, because we know the buyer's journey most of the time. They're doing all of their own research and background on you before you've even walked in the door.
Yeah.
So if you don't have enough on that side, and you're not armed to have those conversations, they'll grill you and they'll try and find the right provider. So yeah, the salesperson who's actually going into the room needs to be across the scope, but also content needs to be there on the website and they actually know what they're doing. And like you say, it's not just a tick box exercise that they've got the logo there. They're actually using it and leveraging it to its fullest.
Absolutely, and we're really good at being able to talk to technical stacks. A lot of the sales process becomes, we use this tool and we partner with this, cyber company or whatever it's going to be. We're really good at talking about tools and partnerships. But then what actually ties all of those tools and partnerships together is actually your ISO certificate. And so, yeah, we just need to make sure that we can actually communicate that, and it'll just mean you have a much smoother sales process just to try to get through those first couple of entry points.
Well, I guess as a key takeaway, what are the key things that you want the viewers to walk away from this conversation with? Either things that they need to do or things that they need to think about.
Yeah. I've been at this for 2.5 years now, which has been crazy that it's gone this fast. And my message has always been the same. There are many MSPs out there, although a lot have started, and although we have done, our fair share by our own admission to be able to uplift a lot of MSPs that are partnering with us. There's a lot more out there that just either haven't made the decision yet to be able to go down this route, or are potentially just a little bit hesitant or don't know what the next step might be, or how much things cost. So my key takeaway is always just start asking those questions. Message me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find these days, and I'm always happy to talk to anybody that wants to have just a friendly conversation, even if it's not around ISO. But just start the conversation, figure out what it looks like within your business, find out who is likely in your client base to be the ones that will first ask you at some point, hey, I'd like you to start getting your ISO because our insurance providers are now looking upstream and we need assurances from you. Figure out who those key partners are, but then also think about what areas or what arenas you want to play in from a growth perspective, and figure out, okay, how long is it going to take me to get certified? What do I need to be able to play into these areas? And then build your strategy from there. So, my takeaway is just start with a phone call and figure out what that looks like, because you'd be surprised often how this can fit in with your business. And, it's not as daunting as many make it out to be.
Great. Well, from my side, I just want people to slow it down a little bit once they've been certified. Yes, you want to just go. You've worked so hard to get to this point, but you want to make sure that you communicate it right. You communicate it fully, and that the team are armed, whether it's sales, finance, or even the service desk team. Like, everyone needs to be on the same page and have their talk track ironed out, so they can actually convey how important it is, and what they've gone through is huge, and and what it actually means to their clients. There's no point in just chucking it onto the website and your email signature. That's just a given. They need to actually be strategic with it and have actual impact. So don't rush straight out the gate once you've been certified. If you put a plan in place to communicate it right, you'll be so much better off.
Yeah, it's a great point. I completely agree. The amount of times I've seen, in our industry, that response, we just got certified, it's our commitment to, X, Y, and Z. It's fantastic. But then I would love to see the follow up. And some MSPs do it really well, and others, they just probably don't have that manpower behind them yet to be able to take that marketing and leverage it the way that they can. So yeah, it's a very good takeaway.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great catching up, and I myself have even learned a few things. So I hope the viewers have got something from this and can take it back to their business. And yeah, like you say, just start asking questions.
That's it. Awesome. No, thanks, Lauren. It's been great. Thanks for having me.